Hi, everyone. It is great to be with you all today. We are the TNC Dow Fellows team working in the Saginaw Bay, and for our project, we assessed and recommended human well-being indicators for the Saginaw Bay Watershed. Before we dive in, I will let our project team members introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jamie Brackman. I'm a dual degree student. I'm graduating this semester from SEAS in Taubman College, Master of Urban Regional Planning.
Hi, I'm Muhammad Irfan. I'm a dual degree student at Ford and SEAS.
And hi, my name is Paige. I'm MD MPH candidate.
And I'm Julia Johnson. I'm a Master's of Public Policy student at the Ford School. All right, so we'll begin with a little orientation to the Saginaw Bay Watershed, which is where our project took place. It is Michigan's largest watershed and is home to roughly 10% of the state's population. The bay was designated as an area of concern by the Environmental Protection Agency back in 1987, and was given this designation primarily because of pollution from two key sources, the first being industrial, municipal, and stormwater discharge, and the second being agricultural runoff. So why did the Nature Conservancy ask us to do this project, and why human well-being? Well, TNC's Regenerative Agriculture program works with farmers in the region to culturally embed regenerative farming practices in the community. And as discussed a bit in the earlier Dow and TNC project about what these practices look like, they are largely intended to reduce pollution from agriculture, including that runoff that we talked about as a primary pollutant in the Saginaw Bay. So in order to promote practice adoption among the farming community there, and therefore improve the quality of the watershed, TNC wanted to create an engagement tool that considers not just the environmental impact of pollution, but also the impact to the people living in the region, in other words, human well-being. The idea is that the human well-being indicators and the metrics that we've identified in this project will be incorporated into an existing water quality monitoring dashboard operated by the Saginaw Bay Monitoring Consortium. And this dashboard is a coordinated effort between multiple entities that operate in the Bay, including the Nature Conservancy, that aims to capture the impact of changes in agriculture practices on the watershed. So TNC actually underwent a process to start identifying human well-being indicators back in 2020. With this preliminary work in hand, our task was to go out into the universe and see what, if anything, other watersheds were doing in this area. So we found 3 other watersheds working in this area. This was in the Pacific Northwest, Puget Sound, a little closer to home, Lake Erie, and then out east, the Chesapeake Bay. We found that in developing each watershed's respective human well-being indicators and metrics, in general, each of them started by identifying a framework for human well-being or domains for human well-being. And then from there, they identified indicators and metrics that fit within each of these domains. And then those indicators and metrics were vetted by community members, stakeholders, and other experts in the area. So with these 3 watersheds plus the Nature Conservancy, we then began our cross-watershed analysis, identifying the similarities and differences between the watersheds and how they track human well-being. An early challenge in this assessment was that each watershed used different frameworks for human well-being. And so with guidance from the Nature Conservancy, we selected one unifying framework for human well-being developed by the Environmental Protection Agency, which includes the 8 domains of human well-being that are listed on the wheel on the slide. We selected this framework as a scientifically agreed upon representation of the social, economic, and environmental factors that encompass human well-being. Across the watersheds analyzed, we identified 15 indicators of human well-being and 50 metrics that fit into 7 out of the 8 EPA human well-being domains. The indicators are identified in the black boxes around the wheel, and the stars indicate the number of peer watersheds that included that indicator as a measure of human well-being. So for example, within the health domain, all of the watersheds that we analyzed included drinking water quality as a measure of human well-being. And below that, in the cultural fulfillment domain, only one watershed analyzed metrics related to participation in cultural activities as a measure of human well-being. And so I will now pass it to Paige to discuss our metric analysis and our recommendations to the Nature Conservancy.
Okay, so as you guys saw, there was like 51 different metrics that we now had to assess. And the goal, again, is to make a recommendation to the Nature Conservancy about which ones they should be prioritizing for tracking or which ones could be immediately implemented for tracking. So we had to have a selection criteria process that was a bit extensive. And this is all blank, but it's normally filled in. We just didn't want it to be like super overwhelming. So we have applicability criteria that are looking at things like relevance. How is it connected, for example, to the beneficial uses of the Saginaw Bay? Environmental health influences, how quickly can it be actually implemented and tracked? And then also we have data criteria, including the temporality, how often is the data updated, and then to what spatial level. And the reason that we separated the data criteria from the applicability criteria is because we didn't want the lack of data for a specific metric to artificially like lower the inherent value of the metric itself and vice versa. And so then we also had to tier them. So something that was tier 1 would be like a high recommendation to TNC for implementation versus tier 3. So for one example, for beneficial uses, it would receive 5 points if it was tier 1, if it was directly connected to the uses of the watershed, versus 1 point if it's not at all related. So for an example, one of our indicators is economic factors, and one of the metrics we looked at was median income. So without having the descriptive words again of how they would be scored, and I'm realizing these are slightly off now with formatting, but this is the way that the metric itself ended up being scored. And so if it received 12 points for the applicability criteria, and then 9 points for the data criteria. And then we added all of that up. And so after we added all of the different categories up, we also had to re-tier them for overall recommendations. And so for median income, for example, it had 12 points for applicability criteria. So that would be a tier 2 recommendation. And then for data, 9 also in tier 2. And sorry, that is off again as well. So after analyzing all of these different metrics, this is what we came up with. We don't have them all listed because it would be very overwhelming for the slides as well. So for our applicability criteria, there were 31 total metrics that were receiving that tier 1 status. And then we broke them down by data as well. So there's 21 tier 1 metrics by data as well, 6 for silver or tier 2, and then 4 for tier 3. And then there's examples, although the metals are all over the place and it looks kind of ridiculous right now. But for example, like a tier 1 applicability metric as well as tier 1 data would be fishing satisfaction versus one that is like job growth, for example, had really great data, but it wasn't like ranked high for applicability criteria. And so in terms of next steps and the way that this project could be continued moving forward, first of all, we think it's extremely transferable. Using the EPA and the framework that they have established already could serve as a means for other watersheds to start tracking human well-being alongside their water quality metrics, which most do. Also scalability, so this would be establishing targets. It's not something that we had time to do. So this could be something for future teams to look into, to actually have goals for each of the individual metrics. And then in terms of I think, did you mention the dashboard? Oh, okay, yeah, so then of course, end goal would be for them to include these human indicators and metrics alongside the water quality metrics on their dashboard. Our team learned a lot together. Obviously, having people from diverse backgrounds was extremely valuable. I really enjoyed working with this fabulous team behind me. We also learned there's a lot of value in scoping projects, which we all had to do at the start, and then returning back to that to keep us in line. Also, engaging in sustainability work, it requires a lot of insight from different partners, stakeholders, as well as community members, which is something we didn't have the time to do, unfortunately, but would be essential for our project. And then projects as ours definitely requires open-mindedness, critical thinking, and adaptability. And of course, we wanted to give a big thanks to Dow for all of their support, the Nature Conservancy, and Ben, who was not able to be here today, also from Dow as well as our mentor and everybody at Graham. Thank you so much.